Welcome, welcome, welcome to Living with Annietude pop-up live today on LinkedIn and YouTube. I have an amazing guest, which I'm going to give you some backstory on our relationship. So I will bring her on, Dr. Summer Watson. Welcome.
Oh, hey.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming into my crazy Living with Annietude world today. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it.
So what's going on, and I just said this to Summer, what's happening is I'm moving and things are, like you can't even walk through my house right now. Like there's boxes everywhere. There's things, little things everywhere. I'm like totally freaking out, but I'm like trying to live with Annietude and try to be centered. And I thought to myself, if there aren't that many people that I would say, oh, you know what, let's do it anyway. Like I planned this and I didn't realize it was so close to the move. I didn't think about it. And I'm like, you know what? This woman is so special. And I felt that when we met, like that there's not that many people. And I just said this to you that I would feel so comfortable and like, honestly, just so real and that you're so genuine that I could have on and be like, I might be a little crazy. Here I am. This is me. And you would be fine.
Oh, I'm totally fine with it. We can do this. We got this.
We've got this, girl. We have got this. I'm so excited to have you on my LinkedIn Live pop-up. So I've only done a couple of these. I've been going live for a while, but I've only done a couple pop-up shops, which is like this. Here we are.
Here we are.
So I'm so super excited to have you and just kind of so I can hear even more about what you're doing. I see the sign Core Women behind you. So if you would give me just a background on what it is you're doing and who you are, then we can just chat.
Okay. So Core Women is something that I created a couple of years ago because after my journey of just living and going through the motions, but living my life the best that I could, but also having a dream for myself of being that I always wanted to be that corporate woman who went up the ladder and, got tenure somewhere. And that just really didn't happen quite that way. I married my high school sweetheart, and yet it was that 7 years after we met, and we met my senior year of high school. And through that, we dated for 7 years. But in that 7 years, I decided, I'd go off to college. I went to Berkeley. I graduated from Berkeley. I then went off to a short stint in law school. Didn't want to stay there. Thought that's not where I wanted to stay. Then went and he joined the Marine Corps. So we traveled around the world and around the country. And during that time, I then went to got my master's in human services with a specialty in counseling. So I did a lot of community-based counseling. I also did group counseling, individual counseling, and couples counseling. And I did program development and community collaboration. And then later got my PhD in clinical psych. And then we were transferred over to Okinawa, Japan. And finally, after 21 years of being a military spouse, I decided I wanted to start my own business. We're here outside of we're in Northern Virginia, outside of DC. I'm from California. And I decided I wanted to start a business. So I went back home to California, met with some of my girlfriends, and I sat there watching them. And as I sat there watching them, I thought to myself, does every woman have this? An opportunity to have friends where they can fill their hearts and souls and be so joyful and just exchange things in authenticity and just have a great time. And I thought, this is what I want to give back. I want to create a business where I can give back as a coach, as an author, as a podcaster, as a live radio show host, that I can give back. And CORE stands for, how do we as women kinetically connect to one another? We are going so fast all the time. How do we take a breath? How do we, in that motion, how do we connect as we are doing now today, right, Annie? Mm-hmm. And then how do we organically learn from one another? We organically learn by observing, by watching, by talking, by connecting. And then how do we reshape our lives through diverse interaction? We are so diverse and yet we're so alike because we're pack animals, right? So we want nurturing, we need to be fed, we need like all these different things. There's a lot of likenesses, but we're different as well. And that diversity, how do we then learn from one another because of that diversity and in that diversity? And then how do we energize one another to promote change? And I believe that's a big deal for me. It's really important for me to lift other women as well as men up in this world and really authentically come from a place where I absolutely mean it. Like, I really want everybody to be successful.
This is why you and I connect on this level, because as soon as I started talking to you and I busted out into my story when we talked at first, and you were just like, oh my God, Annie, like, I love your energy and I love your story and I love what you're willing to share and that you trust me to share that. And, I was just really just being myself.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you that, hi, Scott Garber, he's hopped on, he loves this topic. I was really just being really, really authentic in myself, which I've come into my own to really feel and show myself to the world more recently than a long time ago. And I was so authentic with you and you were so authentic with me that everything you just said resonated with me. Everything that you represent resonated with me because of who I am and my story. So we're so closely aligned. And to answer your first question, which is, do other women have this? No, they don't. Most of them don't. And I didn't for a long time. And I think it's really hard. You can comment on this too. Like, it's really hard for most people, let alone women, for everybody to sort of really show their truest, most authentic selves. I mean, at least that's what I'm saying. Do you feel that way?
I think that there are a lot of different factors, and this is where my clinical side comes into play. That when somebody asks me, this is just as an example, oh my gosh, this person and they're presenting this way. Do you think they have ADHD, or do you think? And I'm like, wait. Back up. Wait a second. Hold on. Right? Like, because I want to know about A, B, and C, and D, and E, and F, G factors, because I can't just make a judgment based on one thing. But what I can tell you, as women, we are hard on each other. So many times we judge each other a lot. And so before I went into Core Women and I started this, I actually did a survey. As a researcher, I was like, I want to do a survey. I want to understand women, where we're coming from. I've studied the history of women and where we've come from in regards to being women, being out there in community and really raising awareness about women's rights, about women, where we stand in this world. And so we've come through a lot of various changes because of various factors. But one of those key factors is values and understanding where we're coming from. So I did a survey, and I wanted to understand more about women and our mindsets and where we were going with this. And so where they were coming from. So I asked women, do you feel embraced by each other socially? And about 47% said no. And I was like, okay, do you have a mentor, a female mentor at work or in school? And about 45% said no. So the questions kept coming and the answers kept coming out like, no. And I'm like, wow, we can do better than this.
That's astonishing. I mean, that's 1 out of 2 that feel that way.
Right. And I'm like, right. And I'm like, hey, why aren't we doing a better job? What is our problems? Why are we getting in the way of ourselves? Why are we not being more embracing? So I thought, well, this is what Core Women's going to be about. It's going to be how we connect as women. It's going to be bringing each other into this fold and making a home for the hearts and souls of women. A home for the hearts and souls of women.
I love that.
But what has happened is it has grown beyond just women. So men have a home here as well, And so I just, it developed because I was watching my friends and I thought to myself, does every woman have this? And I thought, this is a special place. This is something special. And I want to create something really special. And from that, in the last 2 years that Core Women has been established, I'm able to do a podcast, 2 live shows, written a book, been a coach, so done all this stuff and taken all this wisdom and this knowledge from being a doctor of psychology, working in the human services field forever, it seems like, and being able to apply that as a coach, and so it's so fulfilling.
How do you think you developed all of this empathy that you have? I mean, I believe I know the answer, but I'd love to tell listeners or watchers. How do you think that you became this person that, I just fell in love with because of your human empathy, just your empathy and the way you are and the way you connect with people, at least is the way you connect with me. Where did that stem from?
Well, there's a lot. It came come
How much
along.
time do we have?
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm going to take you quickly back. So when I was 6 months old, my mom and dad were married. They were a young couple. They were a mixed couple, and they were confronting their own difficulties, right? Um, but my mom was 19, or my 17, and my dad was 19. And they had these two young kids, me being one of them, the youngest of the two. And I had a hole in my small intestine, but nobody knew that except my mom knew I wasn't doing well. But she said, Summer, you're a happy baby. You were a happy baby. You were happy. You never complained. You never fussed. But what was happening is she was taking me back and forth to the doctor. We lived in California. This was 1969. So this was a long time ago. I'm 51, right? So she said, but you were still happy. But what was happening is you didn't have this smell. It wasn't quite right, right? Baby smelled, cuddly and pretty and blah, blah, blah. And she said, no, that wasn't what was happening to you. So what was happening is everything that was going in me was going through the hole and curdling. And it wasn't until I went into a coma because the doctors kept sending her away, saying, no, there's nothing wrong. She's got the flu. She'll be fine. It was when I went into a coma that I ended up having exploratory surgery. And I tell you this because it leads to other things. Exploratory surgery, they found the hole. I was septic. 4 surgeries later, they said, this is all we can do for your daughter. They got around the crib, the team of doctors started praying, and they basically said, this is what we can do. This is the last thing we can do. And my mom said, you probably never see anything like it today. She said, but you did start thriving. It took some time. I've had multiple surgeries since then throughout my history. I've had, my parents, they left us with my grandparents at an early age, and my dad came and got us, and he was somewhat of an abusive father. So went through that. At 9.5, my mom came and got me and my brother, and I lived with her until I was 18. And that was a great time, being able to stay with my mom. And I think from that and being raised by a strong woman and, seeing her ups and downs as well, that really got me thinking about, the importance of women in my life. And when I went to Berkeley and when I went to go look for a group to be connected with, because it was such a large school, I went to this great sorority, and I found this wonderful, diverse sorority where there were these amazing women. As a matter of fact, RBG was one of those women in my sorority, not my particular one, but in a different, I know. And she was then, a sorority sister, but in a different chapter. So, I look back on my history and think it's my history. And I believe there's 2 things. We have innate and learned resiliency. And I think a lot of this comes from what I've learned, or what is built into me is having, understanding myself, and also having this ability to bounce back.
Yes. You're so spot on with those 2 things. I mean, I can completely relate to that, because people always, like, from what I do in my life and what I believe my mission is, to be here to help heal others and help them uncover, find, and be their truest, most authentic selves. That's what I think my mission is. And it's very similar to yours. In that, and people say, like, how are you qualified? And I say, I have my master's and everything. It's not about that. It's not about me being a coach. It's not about any of those other things, except for it's me, who I am, who I was born. And it's also as a highly sensitive person and an empath, but it's also my life experience. And what I love about what you're doing, there's so much positivity about lifting. I mean, I keep focusing on the women thing. I know that it does involve men too, but for me, my experience with lifting women, I love that. I love to empower other women. I love other beautiful souls and beautiful people, and I love to be friends with them. And I never understood how I wasn't embraced like that. I didn't understand how I didn't have that group until later in life, when I started to really accept and embrace who I am. And
I think that's key, Annie. That's so important. What you just said is right on point. So where I come from as a coach, and what I've learned over a period of time, is really what is essential and critical. And that's understanding our own personal beliefs and values, right?
yes.
So that's exactly where I came off in regards to writing the book that I wrote too in the last couple of years, co-authored a book. It's called Get Real with Strong Language. And what we do is we take that whole subject matter, because it is a sensitive subject, right? And we impose that onto your own values and beliefs as to where those derive. how
Yep.
you establish those beliefs and values. Because a lot of people, we have values and beliefs based on what we were taught by our clergy, by our family, by our educators, right? But do
Yeah.
your values and beliefs align with what you walk, how you talk, what you live every day? Because a lot of times I hear, just in everyday life or in coaching, well, I learned that because my parents taught me that.
Right.
I get that, right? Totally get that. But does that align with how you're living your life,
You. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So when you said, how we've learned things, how you've learned things, how you've gained things over time, and that's gained wisdom, right? So we've all gained wisdom, but here's the thing, and here's what I want to give back is understand your personal values and beliefs. Because once you do, that serves as the foundation, the launching pad for how you want to live your life, what job you want, who you partner with in a relationship, in your friendships, all of it. It has to do with the longevity of those things, relationships, job, how you live your life.
And I was definitely confused for a long time. I mean, I was taught different things. I was taught not incorrect things, but things that didn't really align with how I felt and who I really am. And for so long, I did live like that. I mean, to be completely transparent, I did live not aligned with my core values. And it's been the past couple of years, and specifically the past year, where I'm really, really starting to uncover like what means the most to me, honesty, family, freedom. There's things like that, trustworthiness. There's things that are ingrained in me, and authenticity that I can't live any other way but to be the truest me right now, because I know those things matter. So my actions, like you said, are now aligning so clearly with my values that life is so much better because of that.
Yeah, and I love it. You had a post up yesterday and you asked, I believe it was something to the effect of what's important to you.
What
You,
matters to
right?
you. Yep.
And I thought, what a great post. And I would have loved to have seen you do this as a survey because, and I kept trying to look at the responses because I wanted people to say ourselves.
Yep.
Number one. Why? Because you can't really give back wholly if you don't really value yourself. If
You're
you don't
exactly right.
understand yourself. And that's where I really come from, of understand what your personal beliefs and values are. And I know some of this takes time. I know some of this is gained wisdom. So one of my friends, she owns Glitter Me This and Company. Her name's Sandra Diggs. She actually did a whole hour of her show on this book, I Get Real with Strong Language, because there's a part in this book that says it's time to do a glance back. And I do a glance back myself to give you some idea of how to do, thank you, how to do the glance back. It is a strategy that I'd like people to do, because I think a lot of people say don't look back, but I think it's important to look back for this reason, to see how far you've come, to see those intricate things that have happened along your journey that have had a critical impact.
Absolutely.
And how you have pivoted from that, what you've gained from that wisdom that you've applied to your life to go further. Because there are times, as you probably are aware, Annie, where we may not have liked certain things in our lives that have happened to us. We may not have liked that I had an abusive father, but what did that teach me? What insight did that give me? I never want to be with a person like that, right? I want to live my life. And that made me a little bit, as a young person, it made me more hypervigilant, hypersensitive to people who might be abusive, or people who were, so it was a protective factor, right? So here I am, I'm starting to gain all these, put up all these walls because of A, B, or C, or what I'm learning. How do I break these walls down and apply that wisdom in a positive, healthy way? And what do I value from these lessons?
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, what's your advice on how to start that journey, or your perspective, I would say, on how to start that journey? If you're sort of, I guess, where I was a couple of years ago, where I was kind of just lost. I mean, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm 38 or 39, what am I doing? Why am I not really happy? Something's missing. And that's when my whole mission started. And I realized that there was more to life and I had more of an impact to make. But what's your perspective on if somebody's in that spot, what do they do?
Well, I'm gonna flip this back on you because I want
Okay.
you. Let's pretend this is like a coaching session, right?
Okay.
So all right, and this is kind of a mock session. So why I'm going to ask you what was that spark? What was that pivotal moment for you that made you think, aha, this is not I'm not really living in congruence with my values, or I'm not really living in congruence with what I value, so what was that moment? And I think
First of
that
all, that's a great question. We have a really big compliment from my man, Michael Paterano. Great conversation on how to self-analyze and continue to evolve. Truly inspirational women. Thank you for this.
thank you, Mike.
That moment. So I can tell you exactly when it was. I don't want to sell out any companies, but I was working at a company and I did not align with what they were putting out as their core values. And there were things that were going on in the organization. And I was doing this job where I was, I was successful and I had the title I wanted and all of those things. And there was something missing. I was not making the impact on the world that I knew I could make, but I didn't know how. And that's when I decided to go back to school and get my executive MBA. And that was the transformative process. So I would say the moment was when I decided finally to go back to school.
Okay, but there was something about that moment where you realize my values are not aligning with the mission or the values of that company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that happened during
Yes.
that situation, during that job. And as you said, you release that information. That's okay. But it was something that was pivotal for you. And that's where I would begin. Where is that pivotal moment? Or what was that moment you began to change? What was the moment you began to put up those walls where you then had to break down those walls, where you knew you wanted to change in your life because this wasn't aligning with who you are, where you wanted to be? And I think that part where, early on you mentioned the authenticity and living in your authenticity, right? That's something tough to do.
Sure is.
We've been conditioned, throughout our lives, man or woman. We have been conditioned by our parents. We have been conditioned by business. We have been conditioned by corporations. We have been conditioned over time to believe certain things. But we always knew in our hearts where we wanted to dance in the streets. Could we dance in the streets? Where your mom might say, no, that's not appropriate. Right. Do not have that, that is not the behavior that you are supposed to show to public. Yep. But in essence, what would that hurt?
You just said something so key. You said that you're supposed to. And right. I have to tell you that what you're supposed to do is so far from oftentimes what you should be doing as a person, what's the most meaningful to you. For me, when I did everything in my prior life to this that I was supposed to do, I was very unhappy. When I'm living on my own volition in my truest self right now is hard. It's not easy, but it's the most rewarding time of my life. It's been a transformative process to be able to find out. And you're exactly right in that, of course, in starting at that moment, because that was when it started to change. When I was in it, I didn't know. But now glancing back, like you said, at it and saying, okay, where was I? And what was that time that really I started to make that shift? And how did I turn the corner from there? And where am I now? I think that really goes to show what glancing back does and what really getting to the roots of your core values really can do for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you just put that in a context that is just so palatable and so digestible that it's like, boom, there it is. All that explanation. And if you go back, and I'm talking about, you want longevity in how you feel and how you live your life, what company you work for, what company you establish. People might say, why, I ask you, why do you go into a company and ask about a mission? Why do you do that? Why? Right. Because you want to make sure that mission aligns with who you are. But if you don't know who you are and what your values are, you're going to be like, yeah, sure, I'll take that job. But are you going to be really happy with that job?
You're exactly right. And you end up, the answer is no, because you end up, for the most part, unhappy. And that's where I was. That's exactly where I was. I was not living as my truest, most authentic self. I just wasn't. And that's what put me on this plan to help other people through my experience in finding that, because so many people are stuck in that place of trying to find this happiness or contentment or peace. And it's so hard to do when, just like you said, you're not aligning. Your actions are not aligning with what you feel and think.
Well, I had two conversations this morning, and let me touch on 2 points each of them made. One of them was the first person I talked to this morning. She said, it's tough because sometimes you don't recognize even what you're missing. Sometimes you don't even understand, so you're putting up these walls because that's what you're taught. And so she was talking about being sarcastic and sarcasm and what sarcasm did for her. And she said once she realized that sarcasm was just the barrier to being authentic and being real, once she was able to lift up, outside of that sarcasm, she was able to be like, I see.
Yeah.
I see
protection.
It's protection. I see what it really means to feel. And this is tough and this is hard. That was number one. So I really enjoyed that she disclosed that. And that was really interesting. And then number two, my conversation that I just had, what did he say? He said there was something, I'll have to get back to it because I had it and then it just went away.
That's okay.
He said so many things, but it wasn't until, you actually learn what you value and how you value yourself. Oh, this is what he said. He said he was looking for validation on the outside, and so he took this job because he got like, you're so good at this, you're so good at that.
Yep.
But in actuality, what we end up learning is it's not so much that validation from the outside, it's how you feel inside.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And people just sometimes they don't know because they're in such a chaotic space because we let life, jobs run us to the degree that we forget about ourselves. And I have this conversation with women all the time.
That's why you was at the top of my list yesterday, right? That's why you was at the top of my list.
Right. Which is so important, right? And so many women recognize this, but they don't know how to get past, the life, the kids, the spouse, the job, and they have once had a dream for themselves, right? And that dream was, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, but I love my family and I love my husband. And there's almost a guilt about saying, I had this dream for myself.
100%.
And it's like, it's okay to still have that dream.
The step before dream, though, Summer, is what I'm finding is that people feel selfish and guilty even saying that they're important and that they value who they are. I mean, dream is like the next step, it's like people, I had a couple of people and, to each their own. And I appreciate other people's, a controversial or different opinion than mine. But I had a couple of people comment on that post that said, my kids are first. And I understand where that's coming from. I understand that. But for me, like putting my kids first is putting me first.
Right.
That to me is where I've gotten with this because I gave and gave and gave to everyone and everything around me. And I lost myself completely. And then I had nothing to give my children. So valuing that and understanding what that's about. That it's not selfish. I mean, I was called selfish a lot growing up. I was told not to put myself first ever. or at least that's what the message that I heard.
Right.
And so that confused me.
Well, and I think that the analogy, the person that I got off Zoom with previous to this conversation is, as I was talking about this, he said, fill your cup. And when your cup starts running over, that's all that you have to give. Like you have more to give because of that, right?
Yep.
And so we are nurturers by nature. We want to be nurturers. But why are we not nurturing ourselves? I question, why do we not nurture ourselves? The guilt, what we were conditioned to think, and so that's breaking down a lot of those imposed upon lessons. And I'm not saying that they're wholly bad, but what I am saying is it is also okay to nurture yourself. It's also okay to recognize your value. It's okay because once you do that, you're a better nurturer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, people think, self-care, I don't have time to go for a massage. It's like so not about that. It's like self-care is about deep inner self-love. And so many of us don't have that for whatever reason, whatever we've been through and whatever we've seen and felt and heard. We are in the now and we're in today. And it's like we have to start loving ourselves and having that inner validation. Like it's so critical to any kind of contentment and peace.
And I think you're absolutely right, Annie. I absolutely believe that many times we don't even recognize or know how to identify what it is we need because we're so far removed from ourselves.
Yes.
Because we've given so much. And I say, come back to yourself. Come back to yourself and understand what that looks like, what that means. And rather than doing what, I always call it, people like to call it a dream board. I call it a reality board. So what this means is you could dream all you want, but it's about putting action to those dreams, right? Mm-hmm. So action and congruency and living within that congruency, living your values, living in your authenticity. What does that look like? How do you do that? Because a lot of people absolutely don't know how. They've gotten so far removed from themselves that they forget how to nurture oneself.
I think that is, and believe it or not, we talked for 31 minutes.
I know.
I can't even believe it. And we have to have this again because it truly, it was so healing to me just to have your presence and to talk to you because you're so brilliant and I appreciate you so much. And I just wanted to thank you for being here, but we need to continue this conversation because it's far from over. But I wanted to say thank you. So hold on one second. I'm going to wrap it up and say, everybody subscribe to the Living with Annietude podcast. Summer, hang on. This is my big outro that I always do. I'm just like, bye. And I went